Genshin Impact? More like Genshin Simpact, am I right? I'll see myself out. In this video, we're doing a deep dive review on Genshin Impact so you can decide whether it's worth your time. We'll explore the core gameplay loop, storytelling, RNG farming, gacha mechanics, and more. I'll also be answering important questions such as, is Genshin Impact free-to-play friendly? What's it like to spend money on the game compared to a purely free-to-play experience? Is there any worthwhile endgame content? Do you need 5-star characters to beat or enjoy the game? And much, much more. So buckle up, grab some iced coffee, and let's dive into my 2023 review of Genshin Impact.
Let me pull up a chair, all right? We'll all have a friendly chat, get better acquainted.
Alternatively, you could leave us alone. That is, if you'd prefer to finish your drink via the orifice of your own choice.
A lot has changed since my initial Genshin Impact review. The new region of Sumeru was released, along with an expansion to the main quest. Dendro was added to the game, creating a bunch of additional elemental reactions and combat options. There's a new trading card game mode, and I'm no longer free to play.
Yo! 5 stars, baby! No! Why?
This ended up being a much longer review than I initially planned because I cover a lot of aspects of the game in depth, so we're going deep in this video. But the TLDW version is this. Genshin Impact is a phenomenal game that I've grown to love over the past 5 months. That being said, the game also has noteworthy flaws that are worth criticizing. My goal with this review is not to convince you to play Genshin Impact, but to give you a solid overview of what to expect so you can decide whether it's something worth playing for you. The combat in Genshin Impact is phenomenal. The upgrade and progression systems are really satisfying, but also tedious and grindy at times. The story is really enjoyable, but sometimes the cutscenes run way too long, and it feels like I'm watching a movie instead of playing a game. There's a ton of content for new players to enjoy, with new content being added frequently at an impressive rate. But there's a distinct lack of challenging combat-focused endgame content for more hardcore players to enjoy. And then there's the gacha system, which brings me to one of the biggest questions people have about this game: is Genshin Impact free-to-play friendly? The short answer is yes. You can complete all the content unimpeded and have a great time playing Genshin Impact without spending money. But it's significantly more fun to play Genshin when you have 5-star characters and weapons. You do a lot more damage and can build more interesting teams. Again, you can beat all of the content with the characters you unlock for free, but with the exception of Ling, who is the most broken 4-star unit, seriously, she's so damn good. All of the best characters are unlocked via the gacha system, and it's much easier and faster to unlock 5 stars if you spend money. The difference in power between a 5-star character and a 4-star character in Genshin Impact is vast. 5-star characters are like, I am a literal god who can manipulate the elements and transcend this mortal realm. Then you meet one of the free-to-play characters and they're like, hi, I have a terminal illness and I'm getting weaker by the day.
Ever since she was a child, she's been afflicted with a disease called Elazar. In its final stages, the disease strips a person of the ability to control their own body, and they effectively become completely immobile.
Have fun with your free characters, peasants. Mwahaha.
No, not like this.
Now, if you play Genshin long enough, and you consistently do daily commissions, thoroughly explore to unlock chests, and complete quests and events, you will eventually save up enough Primogems to obtain some 5-star characters. But the process can be sped up exponentially if you just whip out that credit card. Even buying the $5 Welcome Moon Pass nets you significantly more Primogems per month than you could earn as a strictly free-to-play player. The power of my Genshin Impact account skyrocketed when I pulled the character Ganyu, a cryo-wielding bow unit who does a tremendous amount of damage. And I wouldn't have been able to unlock Ganyu when I did without spending money because I was low on Primo Gems at the time when her limited banner reran last fall. Sure, I could have saved up my free Primos and eventually pulled some 5-star character, but I would have needed to wait a long time to get Ganyu. Limited banners run for about 2 weeks and may not come back for months or over a year in some cases. I'm looking at you, Hu Tao. So yes, while you can absolutely have a good time as a free-to-play player in Genshin Impact, will your experience be as good? Well, that's up for you to decide. I personally have enjoyed the game more after I started spending money. We'll dig into the nitty-gritty details of the dreaded Gacha system later in this video, but for now, let's talk about the gameplay and arguably the best part of Genshin Impact, the combat.
Everyone hold hands. Hold the line.
Show them. Right now. A sight to behold. Shine down! Inazuma shines eternal! Submit!
Covenant of the Deep.
When you get the hang of it, the combat in Genshin Impact is exhilarating. Building a great team, cycling through a rotation of abilities, and generating powerful elemental reactions is incredibly satisfying. This was something I didn't really appreciate in my first review of Genshin Impact. At that point, I hadn't really grasped how to max out my damage and trigger the most impactful elemental reactions. Since then, I also acquired a few 5-star characters and weapons, which significantly changed the way I play the game. Enemy variety was also something I critiqued in my initial review, since Mondstadt and Liwa only had a handful of enemy types. But I was basically told by a lot of people in the comments on that video that there were a bunch of new enemies added in Inazuma, and that turned out to be true. Plus, especially after the release of Sumeru, there are a lot of more enemies and mini-bosses to fight throughout the game, which makes the combat feel a bit more fresh and engaging. But let me back up a step and talk about the basics of combat in Genshin Impact. You have a team of up to 4 characters, but only one of them can be on the field at any given time. Each character has a melee or ranged weapon, as well as 2 abilities. On top of this, each character is infused with one of 7 elements: Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, Electro, Geo, Animo, or Dendro. The name of the game is building a team that works together synergistically. Most team comps will have one primary damage dealer plus 3 supports. These supports can provide healing or shields, help set up elemental reactions, or be a sub-DPS unit. For instance, in my current main team, I have Ganyu serving as my main DPS as a cryo bow unit. Kokomi, the Hydro healer, is my main support, who helps Ganyu freeze enemies and provide healing simultaneously. In this third slot, I will either use the Pyro character Zhongling or the Electro character Fischl to trigger melt or overcharge reactions. And finally, I use the Geo character Ningguang as a sub-DPS who can also provide shielding with crystallize reactions. Basically, this team has great crowd control and healing, which allows Ganyu to set up high damage charge shots with her bow. It's really fun to use. One team I'm currently working to build is Yaimiko, Kokomi, Nahida, and Raiden Shogun. Kokomi and Nahida will set up bloom reactions with their Hydro and Dendro abilities, while Raiden and Yai can do aggravate reactions by adding Electro into the mix. Once you have a full team of characters upgraded and kitted out, you can expand and build up additional teams and support characters. To me, this is the most fun thing to do in Genshin Impact. When you finally have a handful of fully upgraded characters and team compositions, you can really start stomping enemy mobs and defeating bosses with ease. And big numbers go brrr. But in order to build out our characters and start boasting impressive damage numbers, first, we gotta go farming. Aside from quests, events, and open-ended exploration, the majority of what you'll be doing in Genshin Impact is building your characters and their kit, specifically their weapons and artifacts. To do this, you need to farm upgrade materials by exploring and completing a variety of challenges. We can't talk about farming in Genshin Impact without touching on the resin system. Original resin is a resource that you will spend to claim rewards from in-game challenges, such as domains and ley lines. So what the hell does that mean? Well, in order to level up your characters, you'll need to acquire specific materials to ascend them to higher ranks. You'll need to do the same thing to level up talents, ascend weapons, and acquire better artifacts. Original resin is capped at 160, which limits the amount of farming activities you can complete in a day. This is one of the systems that MiHoYo uses to keep people coming back to Genshin Impact day after day. So for example, let's say I wanted to obtain a new artifact for my Pyro character Zhongling. She needs artifacts that boost her energy recharge stat, so I could farm an artifact set for her from this domain in Inazuma. One run at this domain costs 20 original resin, so I could farm this domain 8 times in total before I run out and need to wait for my resin to recharge. Resin recharges at a rate of 1 per 8 minutes until it reaches the cap of 160. So in order to min-max your farming, you'll want to keep spending your resin to prevent it from totally capping out, that way you will always be earning more resin. Hey, you still there? And why am I bothering to explain how resin works in Genshin Impact? Well, a huge portion of the gameplay loop is about upgrading your characters and making them stronger, and a vast majority of the upgrade mats you need to farm are locked behind activities that cost resin. So they're essentially time-gated activities. If you don't want to wait for your resin to regenerate naturally, there are other ways to refill it. Fragile resin is a consumable item that automatically restores 60 resin. These items are pretty rare, so you'll want to save them for farming important things such as artifacts. You can also spend Primo Gems to restore your resin, but this is generally not recommended since you'll want to save your Primo Gems to unlock new characters and weapons. Here are all the resin-gated activities you can complete in Genshin Impact. Domains are brief combat challenges that reward talent books, weapon upgrade materials, or artifacts. Ley lines are also brief combat challenges that award XP books or Mora. Mini-bosses provide character ascension materials and artifacts, and weekly bosses will award rare talent upgrade materials. It's worth pointing out that you can still play these activities without having resin, but you can't claim the rewards at the end. And let's be honest, the only reason players are willing to run these repetitive challenges over and over and over again is to get the rewards they need to upgrade their characters. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy these activities, and I find farming for upgrade materials oddly satisfying. It's one of the biggest things that keeps me playing the game, seeing my characters get stronger and building new characters to complement them. But it can also induce burnout and get a little bit tedious and grindy after a while, especially when RNG comes into play with the rewards. Artifact farming is probably the worst offender to the RNG gods. Many Genshin players can attest to the elusive pursuit of perfect artifacts for their characters. Much like the pursuit of Bigfoot, the Chupacabra, and unicorns, one wonders whether you can ever perfectly min-max your artifacts in Genshin Impact. Here's how artifact farming works. The best 5-star artifacts can be gained by completing high-level domains. Each domain will have 2 different artifact sets that you can potentially earn as a reward. And there are 5 different slots on your character. So from the get-go, you have a 1 in 8 or 1 in 10 chance to get the specific artifact piece you're looking for. Then, each artifact has a main stat, which provides a bonus to things like attack percentage, crit rate, elemental damage, etc. Feathers and flowers have a fixed main stat, but the other 3 artifact slots are determined by, you guessed it, RNG. For example, let's say you want to get a circlet artifact for your character. You might end up with any of the following stats as your main stat on that circlet. If you're trying to build a main DPS character, then you're most likely going to be shooting for crit rate or crit damage, because stats like healing bonus and HP won't really help min-max that character. So even if you end up with the exact piece you want from the exact artifact set you want, you still might not get the right main stat because of RNG. But wait, there's more! Artifacts also have substats, which provide even more bonuses. And these are also determined at random when you upgrade your artifacts. Main stats on your artifact are like a boyfriend or girlfriend. To some extent, you can choose your main stat, but the substats? Those are like in-laws. Even if you get that hot crit damage as your main stat, you still might end up with her crazy family members, flat HP and flat defense. This is why artifact farming is such a grind in Genshin Impact. Even if you get the exact artifact piece you want, from the exact set you want, with the exact main stat you want, it still might end up being a suboptimal artifact if you end up rolling crappy substats. This is why you'll see videos like I spent 2,000 resin, or over 100 domain runs, to get artifacts for a single character. The RNG can be soul-crushing at times. The good news is, you don't need to have perfect artifacts to tackle combat challenges in Genshin Impact. So while you might get roasted by sweaty tryhards for having dog shit artifacts, it won't actually prevent you from beating the game. So if you don't enjoy running domains over and over again in pursuit of better gear, then don't sweat it. So how do you unlock new characters and weapons in Genshin Impact? This is where the gacha system comes into play. Some characters and weapons are unlocked through main story and side content, but the vast majority of them can only be unlocked through the wish system. There are a variety of banners that you can wish on. A wish is basically one roll for a random character, weapon, or item. There is a permanent standard banner as well as 3 limited time banners, 2 character banners and a weapon banner. These cycle out on a regular basis, usually 2 weeks at a time. As you play the game, you will earn a currency called Primogems. These can be used to buy Fate in the store, which can then be spent on wishes. One roll is 160 Primogems. You can earn several thousand Primogems per month through free-to-play depending on how often you play and what content you complete, which is maybe 24 rolls per month as a free player. The odds of pulling a 5-star character or weapon are 0.5% per roll, which is pretty standard odds for gacha games like this. After you've completed 90 rolls, you'll reach Pity, at which point you are guaranteed a 5-star. But if you're rolling on a character banner, there is still a 50-50 chance you will not get the banner character when you get that 5-star.
Yo! 5 stars, baby! No! Why?
So if you have the worst possible luck in the world and have to reach hard Pity twice, then it can take up to 180 rolls to guarantee you'll get a specific character on the banner. And if you're purely spending money to get all of your Primogems and earning none of them through the game, then this will cost a little over $300 for one 5-star character. But that's just the worst case scenario. In practice, you'll be earning plenty of Primogems through free in-game activities, and you probably won't have to do 180 rolls to get a banner 5-star character. So the real dollar amount attached to these characters will usually be significantly less. It's still worth knowing the worst case scenario though. Let's call a spade here. Pulling for characters in gacha games is basically gambling, except without the possibility of making money. So if you have an addictive personality, or you're at risk for gambling addiction, I would recommend just steering clear of Genshin Impact and all games in this entire genre. For me personally, I enjoy rolling for characters in Genshin Impact. It's purely entertainment for me. I don't spend a whole lot of money on it, plus I'm a content creator, so I can turn some of this into content which makes me money in return, like this video. And yes, this part of the script is fueled by copium. I know, don't at me. When you run out of resin or otherwise get tired of doing basic farming, you can go out and explore the world of Teyvat. At this point, there are 4 major regions that have been added to the game so far: Mondstadt, Liwa, Inazuma, and Sumeru. There are also smaller sub-regions like Dragonspine, the Chasm, Tsurumi Island, that underground place in Inazuma that I'm forgetting the name of, and the desert region in Sumeru. Basically, there is a metric ton of map to explore, with new zones coming on the way at a rate of about one new nation per year. Fontaine is expected to release later this fall, with Natlin and Snezhnaya coming later on. Exploring to find chests and solve puzzles is a good way to earn Primogems, XP books, and or to upgrade your weapons. You may also stumble upon side quests or acquire other useful items such as character ascension plants, food, and oculi. The last item is used to upgrade the Statues of the Seven, which expands your overall stamina bar and provides other rewards as well. I find it very relaxing to just hop onto Genshin Impact and see what's out there in the world. My favorite region to explore so far has been Inazuma. It's the most aesthetically pleasing to me, and accumulating Electro Sigils also provides great rewards via upgrading the Sakura tree. There are also a lot of puzzles to be found, particularly in Inazuma. I think my least favorite zone to explore was Dragonspine. The freezing mechanic was really annoying after a while, and that major story quest, whoo boy! To the developers who created Dragonspine, who hurt you? Seriously, it's the most sadistically painful quest and region in the entire game. Now granted, my main DPS character is a cryo unit, and all these enemies are resistant to cryo damage, so I'm biased. But still, 60 Primogems was not enough to justify all this suffering. Overall, exploring the various zones of Genshin Impact in search of quests, chests, and puzzles is one of my favorite parts of this game. In addition to combat, exploration, and quests, Genshin Impact also has a variety of smaller game modes and limited time events to partake in as well. The latest addition is the trading card game, which I still haven't spent a whole lot of time with. I'm gonna be honest, this just isn't appealing to me personally. I always skip out on TCGs and video games because, well, I'd rather just do quests, combat, and exploration. So whether it's Gwent, Caravan, Machine Strike, Orlog, or Genius Invocation TCG, it's always going to be a hard pass for me. But I've heard that a lot of people are really enjoying the trading card game, so if you're already playing Genshin, you might as well give it a shot and see if you like it. The Serenity Pot is a game mode where you can construct a small settlement for yourself.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help.
No, not that kind of settlement. Get out of here, Preston. This mode is pretty fun, but it still takes a back seat for me. I mainly built mine out to unlock better items in the Teapot shop, which is a great source to passively earn XP books, artifact upgrade juice, and mythic ore. So even if you construct a line of shacks in a row, it's worth playing around in this game mode because of the upgrade materials you'll be earning along the way. There is some co-op gameplay as well, but I haven't explored that much yet. Genshin seems mostly single-player focused, but the option for multiplayer is there for those who want it. I'm hoping to do some co-op in Genshin in 2023 since I did enjoy the recent Windtrace event. Daily commissions are a series of 4 quests that reset on, you guessed it, a daily basis. Completing these is the fastest way to earn Primogems and adventure rank experience. And it's one of those things designed to keep players logging in as much as possible, because the more you log in and play, the more likely it is that you'll spend money on the game at some point. Genshin Impact almost always has some kind of limited time event running as well. These usually last for about 2 weeks at a time, with some events overlapping. These events involve a lot of mini-games and short story quests. Some recent ones that I played through involve a story quest that gave more backstory to the character Razor, a Tetris/Pong minigame called Akitsu Yugen, and a co-op hide-and-go-seek game called Windtrace, which is actually really fun. Limited time events also have good rewards most of the time, including Primogems, upgrade materials, and sometimes new weapons or even 4-star characters that you can unlock along the way. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye out for some of those really good limited time events. The Spiral Abyss is a 12-floor challenge dungeon with some of the hardest combat encounters in Genshin Impact. But for the most hardcore, artifact grinding, min-maxing gamers in the player base, the Spiral Abyss has become a bit of a cakewalk. And so they've been hoping for MiHoYo to eventually add more combat-focused endgame content to the game. So they waited, and they waited, and they waited. In October 2022, during an interview with GameSpot, MiHoYo finally answered the question, will there be more endgame content coming to Genshin Impact? The answer was a resounding no. The Spiral Abyss is one of the most effective ways for players to test out their party composition and combat strength. If we design another type of permanent endgame that is similar to the Spiral Abyss, it might end up creating excessive anxiety for our players. Not everyone is interested in Musk Reef. Musk Reef is the location of the Spiral Abyss, by the way. This interview caused quite a stir in the Genshin Impact player base, particularly the excuse around not wanting to create excessive anxiety for players, which is kinda laughable given that all of the limited time banners and events are designed to create FOMO and get people to spend time and money on the game. While I empathize with the players who want more difficult endgame content added to Genshin Impact, I personally don't have a dog in this fight. I'm perfectly fine questing, fighting mobs and bosses, exploring and completing puzzles, finding treasure, and collecting waifus. At the end of the day, Genshin is a more casual-focused game, and I enjoy that about it. While I love the combat, and would love some new combat encounters, particularly challenging ones, they're not a requirement for me to continue enjoying this game. If I want a more hardcore combat challenge, I'll just replay Dark Souls and Elden Ring. It's not that big of a deal for me personally, but I understand why a lot of players are upset and disappointed with MiHoYo's direction for Genshin Impact.
Has the Abyss made its move already?
Dean Sith, I see your incessant meddling continues.
Speaking of direction, let's talk about the structure of main quests in Genshin Impact. I will be keeping this section spoiler-free, but I will be showing some cutscene footage from various parts of the game to illustrate my points.
Half-Dan?
Hey, Half-Dan, I'm Big Dan. I enjoy the main story of Genshin Impact. I'm really interested and invested in the lore at this point, and I want to see what happens next. That being said, there is a major problem with the Archon quest structure. There are way too many cutscenes compared to actual gameplay. In many quests, especially in the recent Sumeru expansion, pretty much all you do is just watch cutscenes, punctuated with brief sections of walking to your next cutscene. I don't know about you, but I don't play video games just to watch cutscenes. I want to, actually play the game. If I just wanted to watch cutscenes, I would just watch a f***ing movie. The unique characteristic of video games is that the viewer can participate in the story directly via gameplay. I don't remember this being as much of an issue earlier in the game, but it was extremely noticeable in the latest expansions. So let's analyze a few different quests and compare how much time we spend in cutscenes versus actual gameplay. The Sumeru expansion, from the moment I set foot in the region until the moment I finished the Subzerus Festival, was roughly 6.5 hours. Take a wild guess how much of that time is spent doing actual gameplay, meaning either puzzles or combat in this case. Just under 30 minutes in 6.5 hours. That's 6 hours of cutscenes and walking versus 30 minutes of gameplay. That's a terrible split. Just to illustrate, this questline starts off with 30 minutes of cutscenes and walking with no gameplay. Then you go clear a withering zone with Tainari. I did fight some enemies and do a time challenge along the way, but these were not part of the quest. After 15 minutes of cutscenes, I cleared the withering zone, which involved some actual gameplay for 3 minutes. This was followed by 10 more minutes of cutscenes. The most gameplay-focused quest included 15 straight minutes of combat in exploration in an instance domain, including a pretty fun fight with an Abyss Herald, which was nice because almost every other Archon quest in Sumeru was just cutscenes. Look, I like the story in Genshin Impact, but this is just excessive. There's gotta be a better way to tell this story and get the player involved than just making entire quests full of cutscenes. It gets pretty boring being a passive observer for such long stretches of time. The first quest, where you meet Dunyarzad and Dia, is literally just 45 straight minutes of cutscenes with no gameplay. Isn't that insane? By the way, dialogue options do not count as gameplay. Maybe in an RPG where certain dialogue choices actually create different outcomes in the quest, but that literally never happens in this game. The dialogue choices are completely pointless in Genshin Impact. They could remove every single dialogue option from the game and it wouldn't change anything about the story at all. A lot of times they'll just split a sentence in half and make 2 dialogue options out of it. Those are not different options, they're 2 halves to make a complete thought. What's the point in that? I'm getting so revved up thinking about this, dude, because it's like, the story is really interesting in Genshin Impact, particularly the parts related to time and Khaenri'ah and warring gods. It's fascinating stuff. But there are limits to how many cutscenes I can watch before I want to go do something else. Please add more gameplay into the main story quests. It will make the game much better. So is Genshin Impact worth playing at the end of the day, now that I've just finished that rant? Despite the criticisms I have of this game, I do really enjoy it most of the time. It's why I get so passionate about the things I want to see changed, because I think it would make the game so much better. The combat and progression systems are phenomenal. The story is interesting despite its bloated cutscenes. Most of the characters are badass or hot or both. I like gambling for waifus, and the community for this game is really strong. Genshin Impact seems to have a solid content plan moving forward, with new regions being added each year. So I hope this game continues to flourish for many years so that players like myself can continue to enjoy it. So there you have it, an in-depth review of Genshin Impact in 2023. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more videos on RPGs and action games. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. If you want to support this channel further, consider getting a channel membership for $5 by clicking on the join button below. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.